There we go. We're being recorded. Okay, so thanks very much for taking the time to just spend just under the next hour um, looking at the sitting meditation and the very first steps within it. I kind of thought it would be a good idea to try to make a resource where I can do my normal flashcards thing. Some of you probably have seen that. Some of you, I know, have seen it more than once. So to bring that into a kind of one of the meetings, but also to kind of really deep dive into some of the steps. Something that struck me when we had our first online meeting, our last meeting, was how the practice can be quite superficial in that it can be almost kind of directly related to what's happening in the here and now in your own body, but it can also be extrapolated out to our community and the wider world. And also, each step, although it could be viewed superficially, each step, or I guess, without trying to be too heavily leaning on the Buddhist side of things, each step can potentially be a step to enlightenment, so, or at least more insight or more realization. And so there's no bad steps, I guess. And I wanted to kind of deep dive into each one and maybe talk about some of the thinking I have behind why I've chosen each step and how I've sort of come to it. Okay, suddenly everything's gone quiet because everyone's muted their mic. So thank you for that. I'm taking that you haven't all gone off and made a cup of tea, but actually you're intently listening. So I'm just going to start a screen share. I'll give that a few seconds to kick in. So I think my screen share has started. So basically we're just going to be looking at the first few steps of the full awareness of breathing. I call it part one, the self, because there is a sort of part two, which is about the things around us and the wider world. So what we're really learning in Empty Meadow or practicing is mindfulness. And mindfulness I define really as awareness, and it begins with ourself, as I say, and moves out to the wider world later on. And mindfulness requires, or learning mindfulness, or beginning a practice within mindfulness, requires a bit of belief that it's going to work. And if some of you are newer to the practice or returning to it, even if you've practiced for a long time, a few weeks ago we discussed doubt, and sometimes we can doubt whether we've done any, mastered it at all, even if we've been practicing for months. So a belief based on conviction, not evidence, is required, but no much more so than my analogy of swimming, where everyone hopefully has learnt to swim or ride a bike or do one of those kind of complex motor tasks. And when you first are presented with a swimming pool full of people swimming, and you're a non-swimmer, you can think, oh, that's impossible. I'll never do that. But you look at the people in the pool and you think, well, they're no different from me. Maybe I can do it. But once you get in the water, it feels a bit weird. And then you're asked to do two things which are different, kick and paddle at the same time, and then take your feet off the ground and not sink. And it sort of defies logic when you first set out. But if you stick with it, and there are going to be a few moments where you will go below the waves and get a mouthful of water, i.e. you'll try a mindfulness practice and you just won't get the hang of it at all. But if you stick with it, soon enough you can dive into any swimming pool and start swimming. So that's my little kind of metaphor there. Quick acknowledgements are just to some of this comes from, well, the steps of this meditation are based on the Anapatasati Sutra, which is a Buddhist sutra. I first learned to meditate using Headspace, and some of my techniques come from that. And the Buddhist sutras that I really use as my source material were translated by Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk. Okay, so mindfulness is really about awareness, as we say. Awareness of self is split into three areas: the body, feelings, and the mind. And the mind is further subdivided into thinking, perception, and something else. So I just go on to define. Oh, I've just noticed someone else is maybe joining in. So I will see if. Hi, Jamie. Hi, Jamie. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm just talking to Ruth, Kim, and Rachel about the steps of the mindfulness practice. And I've just done a few definitions which you've just missed. But don't worry, you can catch up. So we just talked about mindfulness being awareness, and the first steps of this meditation practice is awareness of self. And I'm just literally going on to define what I mean by self. So what do I mean by self? Well, I am talking about our body, our feelings, and our mind is further subdivided. So um, we're going to really look in more detail over the next 4 days at the steps of the body, feelings, and mind. So I'm not particularly going to talk about it this time, but just have that as a kind of framework in your head. That's where we're going to when we do the setup. Okay, so the meditation begins with the preparation phase, and like any kind of method or practice, preparation in meditation is really important. And I'm going to sort of make my evidence or present my evidence as to why it's important, and then maybe we can open up a discussion, because I know that Ruth and Rachel at least have done a few meditations when we've had the Empty Meadow meetings, so maybe we can all share some experiences here. But preparation, so the meditation is a guided sitting meditation. So it begins by sitting down, and we'll talk about posture in a few seconds. But the initial preparation stage, I call prepare, lasts about 2 minutes, begins with some kind of signal that we're going to start, and I tend to use a bell, just one ring of a bell, in order to kind of bring everyone's attention to the beginning of the practice. And having found a comfortable position, as I say, I'm just going to focus on position in a few seconds. We're keeping our eyes still, open, and looking at one thing with a gentle gaze, soft focus. Difficult to know what that really means. I guess what it means is not analyzing what we're looking at. We're just keeping our eyes open and really, I think, and well, I personally begin the preparation stage by making like a promise to myself, or maybe like an agreement with myself, that for the next 20 minutes, I'm really going to have a go at this. Because, like I say, like when you learn to swim, it is a bit difficult, and it does require um, pre being prepared for maybe being uncomfortable or not getting it right. So you really do have to make a bit of a commitment, even if it's only for 20 minutes, to really have a crack at it, because it may not be as straightforward at that particular time. So as we enter prepare, maybe in the first few breaths, it's worth making a sort of formal commitment. I'm really going to have a go this time. Uh, there's no expectation that it's going to be a certain way. So it's not helpful really to think, oh, I hope I get enlightened this time, or last time I tried this, it was really difficult, or even worse can be last time I tried this, it was great. I really hope it's that great again. Um, so without expectation, just make a commitment to really having a go. So I feel that that mental commitment is really important. And also prepare is a transition moment from however you got to the meditation situation that you find yourself in. If it's a meditation hall like at Empty Meadow, or if it's a meditation area in your own house or outside or wherever you're planning to do it, you somehow got from your busy life to this sitting position. So you've got to let yourself kind of catch up, as it were, and recognize that this is going to be a transition from my busy life, which was happening a few minutes ago, to hopefully a much more calm, content, focused place. So just allow that transition to begin happening. And really, all you need to do is focus on your in breath and your out breath in order to do that, and just give yourself a bit of time. So here's my thing on posture. I'm a bit obsessed about posture, but I apologize. I will keep banging on about it. But it is really important to think about posture. So um, my description really is to balance the weight of your torso or your kind of thorax, your chest area over your pelvis. So if you can literally balance it by moving it forwards, backwards, side to side, so that almost you don't need to put any effort whatsoever, muscular effort, into remaining stable. That's what I mean by balancing. Now, you could be sitting on a cushion on the floor, you could be sitting on a chair, you could be standing with your back against the door, you could be lying down flat on the floor if you like. Obviously, you wouldn't be balancing your torso in that situation. But most meditation positions, you're really aiming for the green man here, and you're trying to avoid unhelpful postures. The main reason is purely to allow ventilation, which is primarily driven by your diaphragm moving up and down. It's to allow the easiest, least resistance to normal ventilation of your lungs. So that's really what the prepare is about. In the last couple of weeks as well, I have suggested that people maybe flex their shoulders slightly backwards, just for a second, and then release them. And sometimes that can just make it obvious to you that you've got a bit of tension in your shoulders. And also it allows your accessory muscles, the muscles between your ribs, uh, also to maybe not be hindered so much by your shoulder apparatus. So there you go. There's my kind of like my anatomical description of good posture. It keeps you awake, because sometimes when you first come to the practice, you might notice that uh, the only other time that you normally switch your thinking off and go into a kind of meditative state is a few seconds before you fall asleep. So your brain might think, oh, it's time for you to fall asleep. So if you're slouched like this man in a comfy sofa, you'll probably close your eyes and fall asleep, which is sleeping, not meditating. But it's good if you can't sleep. But uh, it's it's also helpful to stay awake whilst you're meditating. Okay, um, so after the preparation phase comes contact, and this is the last thing I'll talk about today, and then we'll move through the other steps in the meditation for the rest of this week. So contact is about closing your eyes. So I'm in my comfy, nice back upright meditation position, and I hear the instruction to close my eyes, and so I do so. Um, and this is a funny thing. This is my Catman picture. When we close our eyes in contact, this is a helpful tip, is we move the tip of our tongue to the top of our mouth. So that's our tip of our tongue to where I've got my handy X here, which is just where the back of your teeth turn at 90 degrees to become the top of your mouth. And the reason for that is your submandibular saliva glands down here will stop making spit in your mouth if you do that. And that's quite helpful because you're mainly going to be focusing on your breathing, in breath, out breath. And if your epiglottis is flopping backwards and forwards because you're swallowing, it's really annoying and distracting. So if you can try to reduce the amount of saliva building up in your mouth, you'll find meditation a lot easier. So as we close our eyes, we just move the tip of our tongue to the top of our mouth. And then we begin breathing in and out through our nose. And the only plausible reason I can find for this in all my study is that it's difficult to breathe through your mouth when your tongue is sticking to the top of your mouth. It's just in the way. So it allows your breathing to go in through your nose and out through your nose. And most meditation descriptions suggest that that's the way to meditate, but the only reason that I can find is that your tongue is in the way. And then really we bring our awareness to the points of contact between our body and the outside world. So contact is really about exactly that, about bringing our mindfulness, our awareness, having made our commitment in preparation to actually having a go at this. Our first point of awareness is our contact between us and the world around us. So that's if you kind of focus on that, then this step basically makes sense, I guess. And I've jumped to the next phase. I'll just see if I can go back. Here we go. So I won't go. This is where we'll kind of end with awareness of points of contact. So it obviously depends on your posture, but most of the time, whatever other than the lying down flat posture, you will often be sitting on something. So sitting on a chair, sitting on a cushion, sitting on the floor. So, and your feet will be touching the floor / cushion, mat, whatever, as well. And your hands will be touching either the outside world or your lap or something like that. So they tend to be the 3 points of contact that I would suggest that we focus on. And basically, you're trying to just bring your awareness to those 3 points of contact. You can do one on an in-breath, one on an out-breath, one on an in-breath, and keep moving like that. You can think of all 3 at the same time. You can do whatever you like, really. But it's again, the discipline, I guess, is to maintain your focus on something that you're definitely getting information is coming into your brain saying there is pressure in these areas. What we're trying not to do, or what we're trying not to bring our awareness to, is thinking. If I launch back, I think I can do that by just hitting P. Yeah. If I just quickly cycle back while this is going on to the description that I had of, or the framework that I had of the body, you'll remember that there's the body, feelings, and mind. And most of the time, our awareness when we're in our busy lives is focused on thinking. Sometimes I say it's like we're addicted to thinking, like a smoker who's constantly got a fag in his hand, and it's it's very seldom is our awareness not focused on thinking. So contact is really about bringing our awareness to point number one, which is body, uh, the part of self for which I've got the most evidence that it's truly there. I definitely have a body. And that body is giving me sensory data, and they're the points of contact. So I'm gonna go for the easiest thing first. Definitely got a body, and it's definitely telling me I'm sitting on something. So I'm gonna try focusing on that because I've got good signals coming into my mind uh, that that's happening, and I'm gonna try not to have my awareness on thinking just for the next 2 minutes. I will come back to you thinking. Imagine thinking is like if anyone's got or had a young child, like a toddler, who constantly pulling at your jacket saying me, 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 me. It's a bit like that. Thinking is always wanting your awareness to be focused on it. And most of the time in busy life that we've just come from, we will have been thinking an awful lot. So this is step number one, having committed to doing the mindfulness practice. Step number one is, okay, I'm going to put my awareness on body, and within body, I'm going to pick the easiest target, which is the bits of my body that are touching something else, because that's easy to focus on. And it's also a reminder to your mind that each step will take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And this is what 2 minutes feels like. Because the other thing you tend to do in contact is think, okay, I'm sitting on a chair, bum's on the seat, feet's on the ground, hands in the lap. Great, got that. Let's go back to thinking. And as you recognize that you do that, and we all do, because we've just come from busy life where we've been 90% of the time aware of our thinking, recognize, oh, I've gone back to thinking. I'm supposed to be doing contact. Okay, let's go back to contact. And then try again. See if you can do 3 breaths. Feet, bum, hands, feet, bum, hands. You probably find you'll go back to thinking again, thinking, oh, my bum's too big, or forgotten to do that thing, or I better remember to do that other thing. And you're thinking again. But just recognize it, get back on the horse, go back to body. And if nothing else, just recognize, gosh, I've been thinking an awful lot previously, and that's not helpful. I'm going to really focus. It can give you a bit of an idea about how stressed you really are. You may know, oh, God, I feel really stressed, but if it's almost impossible to stop thinking, well, at least acknowledge that. At least say, God, I've really come from a difficult, few hours, and that was a really difficult time. Um, and this is the time for me to reset myself. So again, it might make you or give you a good reason to feel uh, kind of committed to the next 20 minutes, really committed to engaging in the practice. But yeah, it can also be a bit of a barometer of where have I come from. It doesn't have to be thinking. I mean, it could be that you're really angry or sad or excited, or you've got a lot of desire or something else. But most of the time it's thinking, could be feelings. I mean, it could be that you're in agony. It could be that you can't breathe because you've got coronavirus, but um, there could be physical reasons. But most of the time we acknowledge that we're addicts when it comes to thinking. So it might seem really straightforward, preparation and contact, but actually I strongly believe it when we're starting out in a mindfulness practice that it is the most important step, because these other areas, even body, but these other areas, certainly feelings and mind, we have less and less evidence that they're really there at all. I mean, we know they're there, obviously, but it's difficult to put our fingers on them. So unless we're committed to the whole process by making a commitment during preparation, unless we can realize that we just came from a really busy time where we were thinking like mad, it's going to be difficult to keep our awareness focused on these three elements without being really solid in preparation and contact. Okay, so look at that. Said I was going to speak for half an hour, and it's exactly half an hour. So I kind of wanted to maybe open it up uh, to Ruth and Rachel. Jamie, I don't know whether you've had a go at mindfulness practice before, or is this something new to you, just to kind of get an idea where you are?
Sorry, I don't think my mic's working.
Oh no, I
It
can
is.
hear you.
We can
Yeah,
hear
I
you.
can hear
Okay.
you. Yeah, can
Yeah,
you? Can you?
I can hear you guys.
Right.
I've heard this from Rach about mindfulness. It's something that I've learned the theory of, but not practiced.
Okay. Okay. I say that because yeah, sometimes some people can have been doing it for years and years and years and probably know a lot more than I do. So I just wanted to kind of see where you were with that. So I know Ruth and Rachel have been in Empty Meadow for a couple of months. Is there anything that sort of strikes a chord with what I've just said with you guys, or any other comments you want to make? Maybe.
I was thinking more sort of when you were talking about the thinking coming in. It's important just to not get frustrated with it. It is just
Mm,
sort of gently pushing it away. Well, not
hmm
really pushing it away, but gently noticing it rather than being like, oh, I'm thinking again. It's more just sort of
mm,
like, oh, I'm thinking again.
mm,
Let's get back to what we were doing type thing.
hmm mm.
I think that's what I struggled with to begin with, but now I'm,
Okay.
yeah, much more gentle with it.
Okay. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I mean, so noting that you're thinking without judging it. There's a theme that's running through mindfulness about don't judge anything. Nothing's good or bad. It's just happening. You can do as much judging as you like before and after the meditation practice, but ideally within the meditation practice, you don't want to be judging anything. And you're absolutely right. We judge ourselves a lot. So we often say, "Oh, you're a bad person for thinking," frustrated. I'm never going to get this right. They're all judgments, really. So gently noticing, oh yeah, I've slipped back onto thinking, and then just bringing it as the next breath comes, it's going to come. Just use that impetus, the metronome of your breath coming and going, to just gently come back to the awareness of where you are in that step. Ruth, do you find, how have you felt? That has it been different from when you started the meditation practice to now in terms of those two steps?
I still find it very difficult. My mind just tends to want to sort of go all over the place. But I think what you said today has just sort of reminded me of things that, because I don't take things in first, second, third time, I need,
Yeah,
I need to have it constantly bombarding me for it
yeah,
to go into my mind.
yeah, yeah. I think it's almost universal that certainly in my experience as well, but it's almost universal as I've been showing people this technique that most people report that thinking is the thing that keeps knocking on the door.
Yeah,
So and that's kind of why maybe recognizing that during contact, recognizing that that's the main issue at the moment is actually useful information. It's a slightly more, I wouldn't say complex, but it's a slightly bigger picture view. But at any one point in the meditation, you are obviously also having feelings and thoughts. That is you. So just because we're trying to put our awareness on body during the first few steps, um, being aware that uh, there's going to be a big dose of energy in feelings and mind when I get there is kind of helpful. I found personally as well that when I began this practice that knowing that I would get to mind at some point allowed me to say, well, as if I was saying to this petulant child that's sort of nagging at my side, you give me attention, I could sort of say, well, I will get to you. There are definitely a step where I'm going to get to you. But at the moment, I have to look after this other one. I have to bring my attention gently and with compassion to this other area of myself. And so knowing that there will be a step for thinking, you'll have your turn, I guess. That can be helpful too. Okay, so I did a couple of months ago when we were first looking at this and breaking the steps down, we did a meditation practice which just looked at each step on its own. They were called the mini meditations, and they are on the website, and they're about 5 minutes in length. So if you're happy, I think we could, to do this, I think we could do that mini meditation. So I'm stalling because I can't find it on my computer. If you just give me 1 second. Oh yeah, found it. Okay, so is everyone okay to do this meditation? It is about 6 minutes in length.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting in a chair at your PC or with a tablet or phone, if you can just, I tend to say to people, just shuffle forward slightly so you're not leaning up against the back of the chair. I don't know if people want to mute their mics so that actually everyone's already done it. Well done, thanks. So yeah, if you just shuffle forward slightly, and then if you just focus on the sound of my voice, and we will start by just looking at the space in front of us and beginning by breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. Just looking at that one thing and taking some big, deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth. In, out. And with the next out breath, close your eyes. Just through your nose, begin breathing in and out. In and out. Become aware of the weight of your body on the chair. Feet are on the ground. Your hands are in your lap. Sitting on a chair. Feet on the ground. Hands in your lap. sitting, feet, hands, sitting, feet, hands. Be aware of your breathing. Follow each in-breath, each out-breath. I am breathing in, am breathing out. Just in, just out. In, out. In, out. In, out. Bring your awareness back to your body, back to the space around you. Become aware of those points of contact. Sitting on a chair, feet on the ground. And then, in your own time, open your eyes. And then if you could just unmute your mics just for a second to tell me that your eyes are open. Thanks. It's much easier in a meditation hall when you can look at everyone. So when you find yourself in that transition period, does anyone have any kind of awareness just now from the meditation that you did? Some of the things that you experience, I guess, during those steps.
I found it helpful to rotate between the different points. I've never done that before,
Okay.
and I stopped my mind wandering.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. So giving yourself something to focus on as being one like target, but also an awareness that very soon another target is going to come along. Might be just enough of a stimulus to keep your mind focused on this bit and not go back to thinking. So I also find that helpful, that rotation. Do Ruth and Rachel, do you, in your practice, do you tend to do, some people do it different ways, so is it sometimes you do a similar thing, a rotation thing, or sometimes people focus more on one than the other, or?
I've never done a rotation thing. It's something that I haven't sort of.
Okay.
If I've done it before, I've forgotten.
Okay.
I just tend to focus on my breath. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess there's there's a slight difference between contact and breath, which is in that mini meditation why I moved from the contact phase to the breathing phase, just to show, I guess, that they're different, and also that your breathing, awareness of your breathing is easier if you've found some peace and quiet during contact. So again, it's important. The preparation is really important, because the next step, like awareness of breathing, the quality of that experience is going to be easier, and you're going to feel more connection with it, maybe connection with that phase, if your preparation has been good. So try, although there's absolutely no harm, and there's no kind of, it's not mandatory to do the steps in any particular order. Try to, during, or maybe try a meditation, Rachel, with, even though you would naturally want to focus on your breathing, use the metronome of the breathing to guide you to either awareness of total contact, like all of me is in contact with something, and I'm just aware of that, and stay focused on that one thing. It's kind of like an exercise, maybe like a warm-up for the more tricky thing of, I'm going to try. If you imagine later in, we've all done the full meditation now. His Jamie's dropped out, but we've all done the full meditation, and so it's always tricky when we get to mind. Mind, I always find the most tricky anyway. To maintain awareness of mind being thinking, perceptions, and the space between those two things, all at the same time, and not spiral off into thinking. So it's kind of good discipline in a way to be aware of the 3 points of contact and stay with them, and not, as I say, not maybe when I was doing my little talk, sometimes you think, oh yeah, I'm definitely am sitting down, I know all about that, now I want to get on to the next bit. Try to stay with, even though it's boring potentially, to stay with contact. That is part of the practice, I guess, is to stay with a boring bit. You'll often find when you're in feelings and mind that it won't be entirely clear when you first get to that stage what is happening in your feelings or mind, and only by waiting patiently and non-judgmentally will your awareness be, suddenly the penny will drop, and you think, oh, actually I do know how I'm feeling. I do know, what's going on through my mind, and you'll be able to look at it with, and get less caught up with it, I guess. So yeah, even these first 2 steps are kind of really important, I guess, in bringing our awareness to a particular point, which might not be the most glamorous, might be a bit boring, but stay with something that's boring. That is actually a really good discipline, because if you stay with it, more subtle details will begin to reveal themselves. Just like, I don't know if anyone's got the window open, but you might think, well, if you sit in a quiet room, maybe with the window open, because this analogy will work then, you might think, I can't really hear anything, nothing's really going on. And then you think, oh, hang on a minute, no, there's a bird outside. And then as you begin to focus, as that is revealed to you, you begin to think, gosh, that bird sound is really complicated. It's got all different pitches and volumes, and how does such a tiny thing make such a... And all of a sudden you've got this really elaborate awareness, really you're aware of a perception in incredible clarity, because you stuck with listening to a quiet room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm taking that you're doing invisible nodding. So so this is great actually, because I don't know that you disagree with me. So but maybe just try that. Can I just not as a meditation, but if I sit listening to silence, it will be boring for 10, 15, 20 seconds. But then at about that time, if you stick with it past boring, you'll notice something that you didn't notice, which in itself is interesting. But then you'll notice, gosh, I can see that in much more clarity than I expected to. And that in itself is awareness of that perception. And the detail in which you can see it is quite exciting, I guess, but also there's a lot of insight there. So that's just about a perception. But if you could have that awareness about your emotional state or your thinking, then you really are onto something. And that's why good preparation is going to lead to much more insight later on during the sort of journey of these 20 minutes. Okay, so...
Can I say then that I missed when we did it on Saturday, there was no bell. And even though I've only done it with you once, my brain was waiting for the bell. And I think that the smell, I didn't have the incense, didn't have the bell. And I think actually that sort of conditioning, I'm going to try and get into something where it's meditation time.
Yeah. Well, if you join us tomorrow, if you get the time and you want to kind of continue with this, I mean, I think I could certainly bring the bell in. I've got it in the car, so I could bring that in. And I actually noticed my little guide that tells me when to say what begins by saying, hit the bell. And I keep thinking, I've left it in the car. So I will go out after this directly and go and get the bell and bring it to the desk. If you are able to get a pack of incense, like just some regular incense sticks, just light one before this session begins tomorrow. Because you're right, we're all subject to operant conditioning, and if it helps you to focus and say, right, this is the time for this is all about looking after ourselves. And as I said in my blog, it's really important with what's going on around us at the moment that we're solid with ourselves, that we look after ourselves. So, make a big effort. It's a bit like having a bath where you put the candles on and have a glass of wine and try not to drop it in the bath. And it's you've really got to do some prep for this one, because I guess the more solidity you can get in preparation, the more benefit you get. And I promise, I totally agree. I will go and get Bell from the car. So tomorrow, and I'll have it on the desk ready to hit. Okay, so thanks very much. I hope it was a useful hour. And I'm going to post this recording on the website for everyone to have a look at. And also we'll meet again tomorrow morning, if you like, at 9:30. And tomorrow we're going to be looking at the rest of body, which is basically looking at our breathing and then our body itself. And we'll take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow then. Cheers.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.